Tactical squads were the backbone of the Space Marine chapters prior to the Ultima founding. While they still are in use by many chapters, they are definitely on their way out, especially on the tabletop. Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling, and today we are covering a personal favorite and very iconic unit to Warhammer 40k, the Tactical Squad for the Space Marines. So, the Tactical Squad comes in at 140 points for 10 models, you can't change that. They move 6 inches, they're toughness 4 with a 3+ save, 2 wounds, leadership 6+, and OC2, standard Space Marine troop stat lines. In terms of ranged weapons, they all come standard with a bolt pistol and bolt gun. The pistol is 1 attack that hits on 3s at 12-inch range with strength 4, AP 0, and damage 1. The bolt gun is 2 attacks that hit on 3s at 24-inch range with strength 4, AP 0, and damage 1. The combi weapon is rapid fire 1, anti-infantry 4+, dev wounds, 1 attack that hits on 4s at 24-inch range with strength 4, AP 0, and damage 1, which is pretty mediocre as most of the default weapons are. The heavy bolter is heavy and sustained hits 1 with 3 attacks, hit on 4s at 36-inch range with strength 5, AP 1 and damage 2. Fine enough for dealing with Space Marines. The las cannon is heavy with 1 attack that hits on 4s at 48-inch range with strength 12, AP 3, damage D6+1. A solid little anti-tank shot. The missile launcher is Crack or Frag. Crack has heavy, 1 attack that hits on 4s at 48-inch range with strength 9, AP 2, and damage D6. Nothing super special, but not horrible either. And then Frag has heavy and blast with D6 attacks that hit on 4s at 48-inch range, strength 4, AP 0, damage 1. Fine enough anti-horde. The Plasma family of weapons starts with the Plasma pistol, which is standard and overcharged. At standard, it's 1 attack that hits on 3s at 12-inch range with strength 7, AP 2, and damage 1. Overcharging gives the weapon hazardous, but also bumps it up to strength 8, AP 3, and damage 2. Fine enough for shooting at a Space Marine. The Plasma gun has rapid fire, 1 attack that hits on 3s at 24-inch range with strength 7, AP 2, and damage 1. And overcharging, of course, gives it hazardous, but bumps it up to strength 8, AP 3, and damage 2. Solid enough and marine blasting firepower at close range. The Plasma Cannon has blast and heavy at 36-inch range with D3 attacks that hit on 3s, strength 7, AP 2, and damage 1. And you can overcharge it for it to gain hazardous and bump up to strength 8, AP 3, and damage 2. Out of these weapons, I'd say the Plasma weapons are the best, but we still definitely have another one to cover. And the Plasma Cannon is definitely a little underwhelming, with the las cannon also being solid for just long-range fire support. Moving on to the next of the weapon sets, because this is far from all of them, of course, we have the next page of weapons and also the abilities of the unit itself. Starting off, we have the Melta Gun, which is Melta 2, that hits on 3s with 1 attack at 12-inch range with strength 9, AP 4, and damage D6 with Melta 2, of course. The Multi-Melta has heavy and 18-inch range, but aside from that is the same with 2 attacks. The Flamer is Torrent and ignores cover with D6 attacks that auto-hit at 12-inch range, strength 4, AP 0, and damage 1. The Grav family of weapons starts with the Grav Pistol, anti-vehicle 2+, 12-inch range with 1 attack that hits on 3s at strength 4, AP 1, and damage 2. Solid enough against multi-wound infantry and light vehicles. The Grav Gun is anti-vehicle 2+, with 2 attacks at 18-inch range at strength 5, AP 1, and damage 2. And the Grav Cannon is anti-vehicle 2+, with heavy at 24-inch range with 3 attacks that hit on 4s at strength 6, AP 1, and damage 3. Same deal as before, though more effective against Terminators thanks to the damage 3. In terms of melee weapons, they all come standard with a 2-attack close combat weapon, so worse than usual, strength 4, AP 0, damage 1. The Chainsword at least has 4 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 4, AP 1, and damage 1. The Power Fist only has 2 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 8, AP 2, and damage 2. The Power Weapon has 3 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 5, AP 2, and damage 1. The Lightning Claws are twin-linked with 4 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 4, AP 2, and damage 1. And the Thunder Hammer is devastating wounds with 2 attacks that hit on 4s at strength 8, AP 2, and damage 2. All these melee weapons are pretty bad just on account of their low attack count. If you want some melee threat, I suppose Lightning Claws are good for dealing with enemy infantry, but all of these are rather mediocre. In terms of abilities, the Combat Squad is their ability, which means at the start of the Declare Battle Formation step, before any units have been set up, this unit can split into 2 units, each containing 5 models. So instead of being able to just take 5 or 10 models, you have this special rule, which effectively means you don't have a special rule once you split a unit in 2. But given that you get to choose which models go where, you can pretty easily just have the 2 special or heavy weapons in one half squad with the sergeant, and then have the others just be some bolter guys to go around and do secondaries and things like that, and just sit on objectives. Though it is really a shame because, while this is their special rule, pretty much every other unit of Space Marines can just do this for free, which would be very nice for tactical squads to get that update, and is part of the problems that plague this unit, aside from their horrible melee as well. Moving on to their unit composition, rather, they do have a solid amount of options. It's 1 sergeant and 9 tactical marines. Every model is equipped with a bolt pistol and bolt gun and a close combat weapon. 1 TAC Marine's bolt gun can be replaced with one of the following: either a plasma melta, grav, or flamer, or a multi-melta rocket launcher, las cannon, plasma cannon, grav cannon, or heavy bolter. So basically the full suite of options, and then you get a secondary special weapon, which would be either a plasma gun, melta gun, grav gun, or flamer. Out of these, I'd say either a melta and multi-melta is your best option, or perhaps a grav gun and grav cannon if you want to go light armor hunting. The sergeant can swap his bolt pistol or bolt gun for 2 different weapons from the following list, but you cannot have more than one ranged weapon unless one of them is a pistol, and you can only have 1 pistol. You can have either an Astartes chainsword, a power fist. You can swap either of them for the other, so a bolt pistol or a bolt gun, a combi weapon, a grav pistol, a plasma pistol, a storm bolter, a power weapon, and a thunder hammer. I forgot to write the storm bolter, but it's just basically a 2-attack rapid-fire 2 bolt gun. Out of these, I'd say probably the grav pistol or the plasma pistol are the best options, alongside maybe a power fist or a power weapon, just to have a little bit of melee threat. These guys will still be very bad in melee, but it at least gives them something. The chainsword has the most attacks, so maybe that's your best bet, or perhaps just going full range with a storm bolter and grav pistol, but then you'll be swapping off whichever you wish to shoot, but with a full suit of grav weapons, so a grav pistol, grav gun, and grav cannon, you will actually have a decent little squad that can blow up light vehicles like transports or walkers like sentinels pretty effectively, which is definitely nice. As I mentioned, this model can only be equipped with 2 ranged weapons if one of them is a pistol, and it can only have 1 pistol, which does restrict you a little bit, but aside from that, this guy is rather flexible. Just most of his melee weapons are mediocre to flat-out bad, in my opinion. With that, we've covered the unit composition. It's time to move on to detachments. We'll cover most of what they can go into. They cannot be used by Space Wolves, so we will not be covering the Space Wolves stuff in this video. Moving on to buffing options, the Ancient gives them cheap extra OC, but they already have OC2, so it's slightly overkill. He's really only useful as a dirt cheap character if you want to get an enhancement on some tactical marines for cheap. The Apothecary can stand up models. If you do bring him for this unit, which I wouldn't recommend, just have him with the half squad with all the dangerous weapons. The Captain and Blood Angels Captain gives them a lot of extra melee and a touch of extra shooting, but I'd say that these guys are just simply not worth attaching a Captain to. He's just can buff so much better. The Chaplain and Asmodai, I just bundled them together. Both give really good melee buffs, being +1 to wound or reroll hits, but these guys have abysmally bad melee, so really no point doing that. Same thing with the Judiciar. Librarian does give you access to Librarius Conclave, and a 4+ invuln is nice for the small unit to just stick around a bit longer, but overall I'd say that, again, attaching a character to a tactical squad just seems a bit pointless. They can all be attached to better units for the most part, excluding very specific loadouts and niche situations with some of the named characters. We're going to move on to the next set of characters that can lead them, which again, they do have a decent suite of characters. Pretty much everything can, but not a lot is worth it. The Lieutenant can give them lethal hits, which is just okay on these guys in my opinion. They can have a decent shot of melta guns, so having those have lethal hits is definitely nice. Tech Marine, the cheap bolter unit could be a decent enough bodyguard, but he generally doesn't want to lead things and wants to use his lone op mainly. The Sanguinary Guard gives +1 AP, but these guys have horrible melee, so no, that is a complete waste. Azrael gives him Sustained Hits 1, which is a very fun rule, but again, these guys just don't really have enough threat for it to be worth it, in my opinion. Ezekiel is very specialized into melee against Chaos characters, or Chaos units in general, and these guys, as I've mentioned several times, have horrible melee by Space Marine standards, and honestly, by most standards, their melee is pretty bad. So, a character like Ezekiel definitely does not want to be with this guy. These guys, which is a little funny given, Ezekiel is still a firstborn Space Marine, at least model-wise. He may have transferred over in the lore, and they just haven't updated his model yet, but regardless, now we're getting sidetracked. Lazarus can lead them, but as always, Lazarus sucks, so why would you? Now we move on to the next section of the video, which I believe is going to be the next page of buffing options. Adrax is a melee monster, so again, it's a joke to attach Adrax to these guys. Tigurius gives them Psyker for Conclave, but not much else of note. All those stratagems really won't do anything for this unit that he can use for free. Kursaro Khan is the same as all the other melee characters we've mentioned. Marnius Calgar is, again, huge melee beast. This would be a waste of his efforts. Uriel Ventress, I'd say this is a fine bodyguard for him since he doesn't really give anything to the unit he leads. They're just cheap bodies. Again, that's just standard Uriel stuff. Pedro Cantor is a fine enough buffer for the +1 attacks if you want your Tactical Marines to actually do some damage. So you could have 3 attack multi-melta, 2 attack melta guns, etc. Vulcan, I'd say, is solid for a melta squad and could be a good home for him while he hands out his reroll buff to units that already have a buff attached to them, whatever that may be. In terms of the Legends characters, Corbulo is just a really juiced up Sanguinary Priest, so nothing there for him. Captain Tycho is, again, similarly solid in my opinion, but he's better off on units that actually get more out of the Rapid Fire 1, like Intercessors or Hellblasters, I believe he can lead. Gabriel Seth is a melee, again, monster. He wants to be with a melee unit. Chaplain Cassius, same again. And Litu, or the Imperial Space Marine, does give, effectively he's an ancient with the durability buff to himself, but he gives them assault instead of extra OC. He is very cheap at 40 points, and his shooting is okay, so I'd say he's actually a solid buffer for these guys. Moving on to the detachments, of course. First up, Gladius. They can get advance and shoot, which is always good. Extra AP for grav weapons is definitely nice, given their low AP. Anvil can give them +1 to wound with their meltas or their las cannons, which are definitely nice, but the unit's too small for really anything else to be worth it. Ironstorm, if you just want to get a bunch of Space Marines to guard your tanks, I'd say Ironstorm is a great place for that. They have a little bit of threat, not much, but still, nice to have. Firestorm, +1 strength is definitely nice, especially against mirror matches and against orcs. Stormlance, these guys do not want to give up their shooting, because why would they charge? They hit very weak. Vanguard gives them a decent durability buff. +1 AP is alright, but given most of their good weapons are very close range, that's not going to be something you use very often. They aren't veterans, so nothing in first company. Librarius, all the buffs are quite solid, the rerolls and extra AP especially, so if you want a good place for them, I'd say Librarius Conclave is a good place for them, but then again, Librarius Conclave is just a pretty good detachment in my opinion, so any unit that can have a Librarian is going to do well in Librarius Conclave. Moving on to the next step, we have, of course, the Divergent chapters. Dark Angels, they don't have the 2 keywords, but I suppose if a small squad get hit with some chip fire, you could have them fire back to decent effect with their special weapons. The Black Templars can give them a Feel No Pain or Invulnerable save, which are both much appreciated. The melee is whatever on a unit that's weedy, though. Blood Angels gives them a Liberator Assault group, which brings them up to more in line with like an Intercessor normally, which is not great, but is okay for bullying light infantry. And they can't be used in Space Wolves, so obviously they can't benefit from the sagas or anything like that, because you'd have to use Grey Hunters or Blood Claws there, who will also almost certainly outperform these guys once their new data sheets come out with their new codex. Moving on to their competition, and it's unsurprising that it is their little brothers, so to speak, that give them the biggest competition, the Intercessors. There isn't really anything that Tactical Marines do like leagues better than Intercessors. Intercessors are faster, they have 2 much better special rules. The specials and heavies that Tactical Marines do get just give them a little bit of extra anti-armor damage, of course. But Intercessors, with their doubling attack special rule, can actually chip wounds off of light vehicles pretty effectively, especially in Codex-compliant chapters. The Tactical Marines do have one slight edge in that they are technically 10 points cheaper per 5 models, but since you have to buy them in 10s, it's only really a win if you need 2 units of Grunts, and given the better special rules and everything like that, Intercessors probably still win out there, but if you just need a horde of Space Marines on the cheap, Tactical Marines are going to be your guys. Just buy 6 of them and then split them, and you'll have 12 units to activate, which is definitely nice. But then again, you also could just buy a bunch of units of Intercessors. And I'm not even going to touch on like Assault Intercessors or Heavy Intercessors, because I feel like, again, they are sort of in a different vein. They're more specialized than Intercessors are, or Tactical Squads are. So overall, I'd say Intercessors are better, but it's sort of a given that Tactical Marines appear to be at the end of their lifetime. Moving on to their best use, and Tactical Marines really just don't have a great place in Codex Space Marines. They don't have a place. The modern Space Marines are all about very specialized units, Hellblasters hunt heavy infantry, Eradicators hunt tanks. Tactical Marines fall more so into Jack of all trades, Master of none. Then again, they are the last vestiges of what Space Marines once were before they got streamlined into a very plug-and-play faction that the Primaris Marines are. Granted, I still really like Tactical Marines. I used them for a very long time. I love the aesthetic, so they can be made good, I think. With the +1 to wound buff, I think 5 of them with a melta-gun and a multi-melta actually do solid, anti-light armor. A squad with the grav guns, I think, is still very solid. Just to blow up things like transports or sentinels, they do them very well. And I think the way to use them is very simple. Put all the special weapons into one half of the unit, and then just have a bunch of bolter guys to run around and do objectives. So again, these guys are probably on their way out, but that doesn't mean we can't enjoy the last chance we'll probably have to use them in official play. They'll go to Legends, surely, and for casual players, you can still use them there. There's no reason you can't. Again, if you probably mostly play casual, there's no reason you can't dip into Legends. Given TAC Marines have had just a horrible track record throughout 40k, usually just being flat out worse than Scout Squads, being a decently threatening utility unit isn't the worst way for them to be in their current state. Anyways, I've been Spoons Rattling. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.